Hello, everyone. We're starting to get our speakers up. Mark, John, you gotta accept my invites. If you are not coming in from mobile, you may have problems. Okay, Rich, the first one to join. John, Mark, still having a bit of a tough time. Well, everyone, as you know, I typically start these spaces a little bit early, just to get everybody a chance to work through their technical issues. So hopefully, we'll sort these out in just a little bit. Reg, how's your post NFT NYC?
Definitely still in recovery mode.
It's it was quite an experience. Were you at Consensus as well?
I was not. I knew NFT NYC was going to be hectic, so I decided to not go to Consensus and take that time to prep myself and not do the conference overload.
I actually went to both, so that was fun. Mark, you still haven't accepted my speaker invitation. Yeah, I think we're all here. Unfortunately, Roman will not be able to join us for this conversation, but as soon as okay, here's Mark. All we need now is Dex to join. And we'll be good to start. What's your Rich, John, Mark? What's your kind of most memorable experience from the recent week?
I would have to say meeting the doc, Dr. Disrespect, at the Midnight Society event. It was super cool to see him in person and chat with him for a bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous of that. And I'm also jealous of all the people who went to NFT NYC. I was had some family stuff that I needed to attend to, but I heard it was a really exciting event.
Dex, you need to accept my invite to speak. You're currently listed as a listener. If you're not joining from a mobile device, you would not be able to speak. So, but I am inviting you. Okay, let's give him just another minute, and then we'll get started we can get started with introductions, and then hopefully Dex can join us as we go through it. So this is Waypoint Web3. This is basically a place that I set up to have a safe and productive place to talk about all things that have to do with gaming in the Web3 space. It is kindly supported by Sanctor Capital and United Gamers, so thank you both for that. Myself, my name's Ilya. I'm one of the co-founders and partners in Sanctor Capital, and so I have to go through some rather standard disclosures. Everything I say is my opinion. None of this is financial or legal advice. I may mention companies and our assets in which we may have held or are holding or may hold in the future some positions. And I think the last disclosure is this place is being recorded. We typically post recordings a few days after the actual spaces. So we've had, oh, here Dexter joined. We've had a number of really insightful conversations in the past, so you can go back and revisit them and listen to them. We've had kind of a whole host of awesome speakers. But today we will be talking about esports in Web3. I'm super excited about that. We've got some great speakers to tell you all about it. And without further ado, I do want to introduce you to them. So I will call on every one of the speakers. Please kind of just say your name, a little bit about yourself, and how you got into Web3 and esports. We'll just introduce yourselves, and then we'll get into kind of the panel questions. So Rich, you're first up on my screen, so please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Rich Cabrera. I'm the founder of Ready Player DAO. We are a Web3 gaming DAO, so we do community and guild. We do esports tournaments and content, and then obviously investments into Web3 games and Web3 gaming infrastructure. So it's the high level elevator pitch, and I'll pass it on.
To be for one little other bit of disclosure, we have backed Artera and United Gamers, so I think that that concludes my set of disclosures. And John, you're up next, kind of what I remember.
Okay, sounds good. My name's John Worthen. I'm one of the founders at Artera Labs, and we are building Web3 infrastructure for fan engagement for the esports vertical, which we classify as organizations, content creators, and also different types of platforms, like tournament providers and stuff like that. But yeah, that's the kind of the high level of what we do.
Awesome, thank you, Mark. Could you introduce yourself next?
Hello. I'm
Yep,
Mark.
we can hear you.
Yeah. Also known as a Chubby, Guildmaster for Secret Gemini. We do some scholarships on our guild, and maybe in the future, we will invest, or we will have some Web3 gaming, more Web3 gaming titles. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Dex. Dex, can you introduce yourself?
Hello.
We can hear you.
All right, good. Yeah, this is my headset. Yeah, I'm Dexter Ancheta. I'm the senior business developer of Acad Arena. So we're currently very deep into like collegiate esports, like campus gaming. Currently, we're very heavy into exploring Web3, into how to help education into both gaming and esports. And we are also one of the hosts of the biggest like Axie guilds in the collegiate space in the Philippines. And yeah, lots of opportunities here.
Awesome. So the way I want to run this is, I'll throw out some questions, and then any of the speakers, you can kind of jump in and share your thoughts. I will leave, 10 to 15 minutes at the end for any audience questions if we have any. So anybody in the audience, if you do have some questions, kind of save until the end. And so to start, I think esports is kind of a big umbrella term. But it's often kind of vague and misunderstood, I feel like. So I think to start, it'd be good to kind of set the groundwork for it. What do you see as esports? What does it mean, and how does it relate to Web3 in your view?
Maybe I could start this. So yeah, for Acad Arena, we're mainly like doing esports like for several years already. Like we've been launching these varsity leagues and for the universities all over the country, especially in the Philippines. So we're pretty much like set up the first stable league for a League of Legends, and right now with Valorant, and right now we have expanded towards like 5 other games in what you may call Web 2.0. So we're right now, mobile gaming is one of the biggest platforms, with PC gaming just following in second. We're currently seeing lots of opportunities, like students who are looking to become the next star player, like the next pro player in the esports space. So aside from that, we're seeing like blockchain or crypto in general being like the next big opportunity for to be the next amplifier or the next catalyst to make the space a much more sustainable field in general. So right now we're just exploring on what we could, how we could like take advantage of it, or like how we could like make use of it to help pretty much students or student gamers in general on how they can find these opportunities. So yeah, just like a smooth brush on it, on like an idea on what we're how we are taking it.
Yeah, so for me, what I think it is I think that esports is a phenomenon. And what that phenomenon does is I think it creates competitiveness. I think culture derives from it. And I think it does a really good job of creating global camaraderie, which I think is a really cool thing. And I think it has the capabilities to do that better than other things. It's definitely the closest to soccer and the traditional sports side as possible. But it also kind of helps bring that traditional model that traditional sports brings, with getting in so many different types of people, whether that be, true enthusiasts, casual fans, different types of sponsorship activations. Esports is what helps that brings that to the gaming community. And because of that, it kind of creates three things, right? So I already talked about how it brings recognition on a global level, but it also drives the meta to what casual players and content creators create content on, and show in their gameplay that engages millions and millions of people globally. And then the last thing, and I think Dex was hitting on it, but it does provide kids opportunities to go to school and learn and receive scholarships, like traditional sports does, which I think is really, really cool, because gaming is about creating a welcome environment and opportunities for everybody. And because it's so digitally oriented, it's very well positioned to do that.
There's something Dex said that I kind of wanted to kind of follow up upon. And Mark, do you want to say something? I'll let you jump in first.
Yeah. For some who don't know what esports is, it's basically if you're playing a video game competitively and the whole world is watching you, spectating you how you play, how you compete. That's esports, meaning you have the viewership all over the world, in all platforms, whether you play it on your PC, mobile, console. That's why esports is a big thing. Helping the game titles and the scene. Yeah.
So I want to connect, bring all of this together. Dex, you mentioned the term amplifier, right? And this, how esports can become an amplifier for Web3. But in Web2, and correct me if I'm wrong, esports is still sort of a kind of a niche thing, right? So how can something that's a niche thing in Web2 become an amplifier for Web3?
Ah, got it. Well, it's all up to the perspective. Like right now, um, I was actually like talking to like some of my friends or like some of my contacts in Korea, and it's all like up to perspective. Like, believe it or not, even in Korea, esports is still like being frowned upon, like by the elderly, like the older age brackets. Like, even though that we have this perspective, like Korea is like the number one in esports, like they are still also like tackling against that problem. So like even if you like look at the traditional esports, like not everyone is like uh wishing their sons or daughters to be the next Michael Phelps, or the next pretty much the next athletic superstar. So right now it's all about like getting those opportunities out and getting those doors open for the students, like for the younger generations, or pretty much any of the people that's aspiring to be part of the esports industry, be it like part of a pro team, like part of behind the scenes, if you want to like organize the tournaments. So being a niche for me, like personally, or even like a wider perspective, is something that you can easily deal about it. It's like a niche, but it's not anymore like a smaller niche. Like as far as Web 2.0 is concerned, like I started out like 10 years ago in esports, and back then there was like almost nothing. Like the term esports wasn't even a thing back in like 2005, 2006. So it right now everyone has all these opportunities that they would not like have never otherwise have, and there has a lot of institutions and organizations that have been putting together all these programs in a worldwide scale. Wherein right now we're seeing all these scholarships, all these varsity leagues popping up in Europe, in NA, and right now, and academia is on the forefront for Philippines, and hopefully we get to expand this in Southeast Asia. So for me, it will always be a niche for some people, but I mean the long game here is to penetrate that mainstream, you know. So finding just breaking that is will always be part of the game, or will be always part of like our mission and vision. And at the same time, we have the same sentiments towards like applying the same to Web3. I could actually expound further on why that is the case for personally for me and also for Acad Arena, but that's how we're approaching it right now. Hope that makes sense.
I'm curious if any of the other speakers have anything to add to that before I kind of follow on.
I think esports from a competitive angle is pretty niche, quite frankly, even though you see massive, massive viewership and a really highly engaged viewership when you look at the numbers, which is always a sponsorship stream. But I think it's niche right now because it's very, very hard. Like traditional sports at the professional level, it's extremely hard to be able to compete at that level. And I think that's where kind of the casual side of things and where I think blockchain, games so far like actually are actually providing a pretty good on ramp for this. You have to introduce esports for casual people too, because that's where the lion's share of the community is at, and everybody has it in their nature to be somewhat competitive, and gaming brings that out of people like nothing else. So I think that's what's going to broaden things up a little bit too. But yeah.
Is there something fundamentally different about kind of the Web3 setup that makes esports either harder or easier to kind of share with the community or kind of engage with the community and the players?
I think it's fundamentally a lot harder for Web3 esports to become more mainstream in a Web2 environment because of just perceptions and just that there's not that many games that are fully fleshed out yet that could actually be a sustainable, a sustainable league or series. And I think that the ideology of Web3 versus Web2, like, what's a blockchain game, what's not, I think it kind of alienates a crowd and makes it a little bit more unapproachable, as well as having to kind of buy in assets to be able to even start. It kind of makes it tough, especially because this audience is already pretty jaded on the ideas of monetization in general because of like loot boxes and microtransactions and things like that. So it kind of, I think it's harder in the beginning and there's a lot more legwork, but in the long term, I think it's going to be much more fruitful and much more engaging. And I think that that's where all esports titles are going to have some type of a Web3 integration into them, because I think that's where you're going to get more community buy-in and more access to people feeling like they're involved, even if they aren't competing at the highest level.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty much on the same boat with John on the perspective of that. Like right now, I believe we're still under the impression like we're all still early. Like I believe I'm still early, or like pretty much all the people I know that are invested into the space are all early. Web3 still has like ways to go before it reaches that level of esports respect that let's say League of Legends already has, Dota 2 already has, Street Fighter already has. Like all these established titles, it took them years like before they got this level of establishment and respect that they got with in terms of like player participation, viewership, sponsorship. So I mean, anything could happen. Like as far as like crypto investments go, like we all know, like nobody has the crystal ball. It all comes down to like how fast the development comes and how fast all the committees can respond. So it could be as fast as we don't, or who knows, it could be as fast as within the year, or it could take like maybe 2 or 3 more years before like we get our first real Web3 game. But for me, like Web3 just introduces like lots of these unique aspects, like as John mentioned, like owning moments, like owning parts of the game, or like something that you have. Let's say you are grinding this game, but it's not something that you really own, which for me is one of the key aspects of what makes Web3 or decentralization as a whole something somewhat attractive. But in terms of like as far as esports goes, I honestly believe like anything can happen. Like who knows? Like some developer out there is like already doing the next level game. We just don't know yet, and he will just like come up with an announcement. I mean, yeah, that's just me right now.
So, would it be fair to say that a lot of it depends on a particular game title, right? If the industry gets a really great game that kind of fits the esports model, esports can start to kind of take off. So, kind of if we're going from that perspective, what at least what genre, what type of game do you think kind of fits that mold the best?
I'm really curious to hear the other guys on the panel here, their opinion on this before I chime in.
Rich, Mark, I'm gonna pick on you just because you've been quiet a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I don't think people are gonna watch genres like that are more passive, like Candy Crush and stuff like that, right? I think the more competitive, active esports scene tends to revolve around like FPS type games. But I think like what some of the other people were saying as well is I think maybe Web3 gaming is going to be a little bit different on the esports side because just the nature of Web3 is more around community and getting others involved, right? And I've seen a lot coming out of the space around creating like 1v1 showdowns where maybe it's not particularly like just top players that were invited to tournaments, but maybe it's to content creators or influencers or founders or guild leaders, etc., creating experiences for their communities. So like kind of the way I'm envisioning it, I guess, is more decentralized. I know that term's a little overused, but more decentralized aspects of esports and tournaments to where we can have uh, micro communities creating their own pieces of excitement around that approach as well. I'm not sure what anybody else's thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so I guess I'll hop in, and I think the FPS game is definitely going to be the first one that actually has some type of a significant league around it, if I had to guess. But I don't even know if it's necessarily the type of game as much as it is the quality of game. And not to say that the game economies and the gameplay itself isn't clean on things that are out right now. I think that, and we're really going to see this in the latter half of this year into next year with there's some pretty, in my opinion, very impressive AAA style of games coming out that I think that graphically meet the demands that the fan base would expect when watching competitive league play, but also having really fleshed out fighting mechanics and things like that. That's going to make a big difference because everybody's very accustomed to the war mechanics and Apex and seeing how clean it is. They're going to expect the same thing, and if we want anything sustainable, we must expect the same thing as well for that level of gameplay.
Uh, for the community to watch us and enjoy the games. For me, the genre games must have as MOBA or FPS because it's the most viewership uh, in this current time, right? So yeah.
Go ahead, Dex.
Right. So actually, this has been like one of the one of the top points of discussion in even in Web 2.0 and even in esports. Like, what is the game or what is the genre that brings in the most spectacle? Like, what brings in the most participation? If we like visit back in a few years, like what started it all? It was like the RTS genre or the real time strategy. Like if we go back to as early as the early 2000s, like how it started out in Seoul in Korea, it was StarCraft Brood War pretty much because they had the community, they had the player base, they had the spectacle, and it had the skill to be one of the respected few to like be recognized as one of the few good people at the game, and it pretty much gave birth to what we know esports as it is now. But if you look around right now, like RTS is nowhere to be found. Like its nearest cousin, it would be like League of Legends or Dota 2. So the MOBA genre in Southeast Asia, it's Mobile Legends or Arena of Valor. So the genres like changes every generation. Like one generation can be 4 years, 10 years. It depends on like what is accessible to the community, what they can play. Because right now, one of the few things that defines what is a good game is if people can play it and how many can people can take part in it. So accessibility has been like one of the most crucial factors in what makes a game successful. Like in recent times, at least in Southeast Asia, I'm not sure in other parts of the world, but PC gaming has been struggling to catch up to its mobile game counterparts because mobile gaming has been just more accessible in terms of cost, in terms of like the number of games, and in terms of like the learning curve. So there's just like several factors that defines what kind of genre can take the lead in the pack. Like a few years ago, it was like Dota 1 or Dota 2, and then that kind of slowly shifted towards the mobile its mobile counterparts. And right now, out of nowhere, Valorant is now one of the more popular PC titles in Southeast Asia. And before in not actually not far than that, like just before Valorant, like we had PUBG, we had Apex Legends. Battle Royale just came out from nowhere. It came out from a mod from if I'm not wrong, it came from Army or Army Z. Like, so it came out from a mod. Like the community decides, and pretty much the community just also is dictated by what's available for them to play. So there's lots of determining factors here. It's hard to predict right now, but the trends are there. I guess right now, if you are to make a bet on like which genre is it, I'd say it should be a shooter game because everyone can easily recognize that, and a fighting game. And weirdly enough, I have never seen a fighting game project. I mean, if any of you guys are like familiar with one of the older title or a very old mod for fighting games called Mugen, like it's like an open source fighting game that's have been out there, and it gave birth to this Twitch phenomenon called salty bets and all these subcultures like you're seeing right now in the FGC communities. Like it's very open source, and right now it's just depend on who plays it and how you watch it and how big is the following. So right now it's just very hard to predict. At the same time, you know what makes a game the next esports title. I hope that made sense, but it's one of the hardest to pin down.
Yeah,
Um,
it's actually something that I was talking about this week at NTMIC with a few different people. And I think one of the core things is replayability. And with that comes, like skill involvement and a tier of skill to separate, the top esports players from the rest, right? It's that excitement that revolves around them being just that good to be at the top. And then that replayability factor is what creates like a novel experience every time the game is played, which ties back into content and what makes it enjoyable to watch, right? Because it can be the same game, but can be played a different way every time you play it, or have a different outcome or different strategies. So it's kind of what I look for when looking at the potential for content and esports in the game.
I'm not sure who of the speakers actually mentioned this, but there was a point about, kind of there needs to be a community around the game for kind of the esports element to really take off, right? And I think StarCraft was maybe was the one that was given as an example. But right now, a lot of the communities around Web3 gaming are kind of brought together by kind of the play to earn drive. And that's not necessarily kind of the competitive drive that lives and kind of that feeds esports gaming. So I'm curious, kind of how do you see Web3 evolving around kind of community building in order to kind of attract the players who are there to kind of compete and watch, right? How does that balance out with play to earn gaming?
Yeah, I think this is really, really important, and maybe one of the most important things that we've spoken on, and the fact that we have to separate inorganic and organic community growth. And I think with Web3, it's really easy to get a lot of inorganic community growth because of tokens and incentivized structures to bring people on to farm and to do different things. And for a lot of the normal gaming community that hasn't had very much exposure to that yet, it's quite scary, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think that we as a community need to work together, the companies in this space and who are building the Web3 games, who are building infrastructure for Web3 gaming, really need to come together and work on ways to organically bring in a playing audience at a casual level first, and that will drive demand to create more of a competitive scene. But I think we don't do a great job of organic growth quite yet. And you can see this in polling throughout all different types of geographic regions that are interested in Web3 gaming right now. A lot of this reasoning for coming in is because of financial incentives. But at the core of gaming, that's really not what it's about. A lot of people are gaming just from an escape from everyday life and just love being able to go on their phones or on their computer or on an Xbox and go play their favorite game to kind of clear their head, or get on a Twitch stream and watch their favorite content creators stream. It's an escape and not always financially incentivized. And we're getting there, but it's more of a time thing. And I think then one of the best ways that we can fix this and help ourselves is to go to traditional gaming ecosystems, go to different types of organizations and content creators who usually stream, not Web3 related things, and introduce their audience. And hey, this is why it's going to matter. Hey, it's cool to be able to own the items that you spend hours and hours playing to get, instead of it just being stuck and owned by a publisher, and being able to utilize it in different ways. And I hope that's what we do a good job of at Otera Labs, is being that bridge from these Web2 infrastructures and orgs and platforms and content creators, and bring these opportunities with a new audience to people that are building really cool things in the Web3 space. And it's going to take time, and time heals all wounds, like they say, but time is what's going to build the trust to make this seem like it's going to last and not just be a phase. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Right. Yeah, very much like agree on like most of those points. Like personally for me, there's been like two games that's been really like living pretty close to what crypto gaming or GameFi or Playground is trying to achieve. And it's like trading card games and MMOs. So I've had like my fair share of playing both genres. Like I've played a ton of Magic the Gathering, played of like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and also played RuneScape, tons of World of Warcraft, as well as Final Fantasy 14. Like all these, both genres, like both sides of those gaming, is something that I kind of see the potential of Web3 and GameFi and how they could excel at. It's just that like right now, everyone's like trying to crack that code, or like how they could achieve that same effect and the same success at the time. It's one of actually my love for card games is how I got started in Axie Infinity like last year. I tried like being a very tryhard in that game, because by that time I was very amazed by the amount of cards, the amount of mechanics, the strategy in the game. So, and the fact that you could own your axes is something that kind of resonated a lot to me. Like, my problem with the other card games in Web 2.0 is I never own my cards. Like in Magic the Gathering, in paper, if I buy a card, that's my card. But in, let's say, in Hearthstone, in Runeterra, it's something that you will never own. And if, let's say, that the developer or publisher just decides to shut down the game servers, it's gone for you. So that was like one of my biggest issues. That's one of the reasons why I stopped playing Hearthstone altogether. But for Magic the Gathering, I've been playing it for more than 10 years already. It's because I own my cards, I own my collection, and it pretty much like I get to play how I want to play it. And I saw it in Axie. Like, it could be that. Who knows? Maybe 5 years, 10 years from now, Axie is the same level of Magic Gathering. We'll never know. Hopefully they do. Like, uh, but the mere fact that you get to own something digital at a very true level is, back then you wouldn't even imagine the possibility of that. So for me, in terms of like the side of card gaming, like, it kept me playing for this very long time. So you could maybe follow that model of how the paper industry for trading card games do it. Like, it's a right now you could say it's a pretty solid blueprint at this point. And as for like the MMOs, like all those hours, I wouldn't say they were a waste of time. Like, I had a ton of fun like putting in those hours, like in Final Fantasy 14, and more recently in Lost Ark. Like, these moments of gaming produce like memories. And more recently, I had this like vision of like all of these achievements that you get in gaming is it could be an NFT, or I'm not sure if everyone watched here Inside Out, the Pixar movie, where you know the concept of core memory, right? So for me, because memories are they they're invaluable. Like, it's up to you how much you value it, pretty much, or if you don't want to sell it or you want to keep it. But imagine like being one of those hardcore guilds, taking it out the boss, being a world's first. That's one epic moment that you could never recreate anywhere else. And with NFT or with GameFi, with crypto, that could be something more into this path, into this route.
Um, I wanna kind of follow this forward with a little bit of a conversation about onboarding, right? So, we talked about kind of esports, the community, but there are a lot of traditional esports teams, right? And within each guild right now, we see kind of pro players starting to experiment with play to earn, and also kind of with the early kind of Web3 esports. What is the onboarding process like right now for Web2 professional players coming into the Web3 space?
I guess I'll start. So we partnered up with Complexity Gaming, and they're doing some really, really awesome stuff. And one of the things why we resonated really well with them is that our company takes a stance of progressive decentralization. And I know it's kind of looked down upon in the space, but right now we're managing the keys for these fans' wallets for their collectibles. And the reason that we're doing that is because we're being cognizant of where the education level is for the fans, and also for the content creators. So they're interested in the new technology. They don't want to get too far left behind, but they don't want the full kitchen sink thrown at them. And we're eventually going to open it up to where you can and then regenerate your keys and have full control over your wallet if you choose to do that as a user. But that's been the thing that's made this process kind of seamless for us in onboarding creators and orgs, is because it's easy. And if something goes wrong, if a transaction failed, or if gas was out of control that day, or various reasons, like having to explain what a bear market is, why is my crypto that I bought to interact so much less than what it was, like, those are questions that the content creators and orgs are not necessarily the best prepared to answer. and that's who it'll fall back on. It'll be on them from their fans, and that's why it's a little bit scary. So, like I was mentioning earlier, hopefully our goal of taking the stance that we take and then educating along the way, and then we'll be able to pass, the companies, like the organizations and platforms and content creators that work with us on to the next level of getting more involved in these Web3 games, in these different DAOs and things like that. Because I think that's where it's going to end up. I think that traditional esports organizations are going to create DAOs of their own once it starts to make sense and their fans understand it, or they're going to start to acquire other DAOs. And it might happen at a league level too, like ESL, for example, could have an interest in something like this. But I think at least that's how I view it right now, is doing it slowly and taking the time to educate while the onboarding process is happening.
Go ahead, Dex.
Right. So for us, we're not a pro team. Like Academia is like very focused on the educational front. In terms of like our onboarding process, we really take the time on explaining like what is your seed phrase and why you should take care of it, and what is like what is a custodial wallet, what is a non-custodial wallet is, and why is what are the like the main difference of holding your keys and not holding your keys, like keeping your assets in a secondary exchange or in your MetaMask. So pretty much like we're very focused on that. As long as you're willing to learn, because our forefront is like on students mainly. So we have a lot of like appetite on learning what is Web3 all about, especially like in last year's bull run. Even right now, even like we've been seeing the current trends, there's still like the appetite to learn. So for us, it's mainly like okay, here's how you get started, and then pretty much we try to be on that educational front, why you should be responsible, and why if you like send it to the wrong address, it's lost forever. It's that of a big deal. And right now, one of our main push drive is like we want to like reduce the amount of people getting scammed day in day out, especially here in where we are, where I'm always seeing like scam stories, like people getting taken advantage of. So that's one of our main drivers into the space.
Rich, Mark, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah. We on wait. Sorry.
Gonna write it off as technical difficulties. Rich?
No, I think the other guys kind of got it, hit the nail on the head, and don't really have anything on top of that. I think it makes sense, right?
I do want to follow up on this though, because we've talked a lot about kind of the support, but at the same time, there's kind of a number of teams trying to build out tooling, right, to help kind of, on basic things, even like, how to set up, your own tournament, or how to create kind of payment infrastructure. Kind of from your perspective, what tooling is still missing? What do we need to build out to make this kind of a more seamless experience on the Web3 side?
Yeah, I mean, I think Web3 gaming in general still has more improvements to come in terms of user experience, and that's my main push point, right? With blockchain, we're already beating on the finance thing, right? We don't have to wait 3 to 5 days to transfer money to people to pay them out. We can send it immediately afterwards. The thing is, though, we also want to make sure we review and look through any complaints about cheating or rules, etc. So trying to figure out the best approach there is. I know a while back there was also discussion around like in-person event with someone participating virtually and rules around that. So I think just like a few standards to be set as we build out the space. Make sure we leverage the benefits of a blockchain in terms of immediate payouts, and then continue to work towards improving the UX, right? We know wallets are clunky, and for people that aren't in the space or technically inclined, it can be a little bit difficult. So those are the kind of points that I would add to that.
Yep, I agree. I think that, and just the simplifying the transactions and wallet side of things as much as we possibly can. I think Fractal did something kind of interesting. They announced last week, so we'll see how that goes in getting people to integrate things easier and getting fans to be able to and gamers to be able to adjust and make it feel like something they're already intuitively used to. So onboarding is always going to be the critical factor.
It's still in progress. It's unending possibilities. Let's say, what if esports event utilize smart contract through blockchain technology? Teams, org, and viewers can have the visibility where the community funded shares and prize pool will go. It's seamless. For example, many orgs facing difficulties on delays or of prices from events and tournaments. If you use smart contract, I think the delay will be lessened or maybe no delays because it's instant. It's transparent and yeah, it's seamless. Yeah. And what if esports events, tickets, or passes will be minted through blockchain, right? Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I love that a lot as access keys and stuff. I think that's great.
Same thoughts overall.
I wanna jump topics a little bit here. I think at the very beginning, one of the speakers mentioned, kind of the room for casual gamers and how casual gamers kind of make up kind of the vast majority of kind of both, the total gamer population and also kind of the audience for esports. And so I'm curious, how do you see, is there room for casual gamers within the Web3 esports paradigm, and does that kind of create a catalyst of its own?
There definitely is, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how this works. I think tournaments is always going to be a nice entry place for casual gamers to be able to get their competitive nature out as well. Similar to with content creators, a lot of people spend a lot of time focusing on getting access to different types of content creators running huge campaigns. But at the end of the day, if you can run even more micro campaigns with micro creators and stuff like that, those are also very, very very fruitful opportunities as well. And I view it the same way with esports. Like, we need to give as many people access as possible to being able to be competitive. And I think that mobile 100% has the leg up here. Definitely has a leg up here.
Uh, our community, we have Axie Infinity Scholars. We let them use our assets, our team assets, and our our own name tags, like the secret name tag. They are casual gamers, but they represent Team Secret. I think it's a boost for them to join tournaments and carry a well-known the esports org, right?
Yeah, basically to answer directly, if there's room for casual gamers in esports, absolutely there is. Like, there can't be competitive players if there's no casual spectrum to it. Like, everyone starts out casual. If Candy Crush had it their way, they would be like the only competitive esport in the world. But like, just put into perspective, like, if Candy Crush is the only game out there, even right now, Valorant, they have their fair share of casual gamers. Even Dota 2, like, any game right now has their, like, both hardcore, competitive, casual, or like pretty much of playing after work. So it's also boils down to, like, if the community is welcoming, there's room for someone if you want to make room for them. And also, in all of these games, gatekeeping exists, and it's also up to the members of the community to, like, prevent that and make it inclusive.
Um, I want to kind of open this up, take this moment to open this up for audience questions. If somebody has a question in general for one of our speakers, please raise your hand. I'll call you up. You'll get to introduce yourself and ask a question. Don't be shy. And yeah, raise your hands. In the meantime, um, I wanted to kind of, from your perspective, um, what are you looking for right now in the next? Oh, we have a question. Before I I delve into this, I'll let RJ ask a question. RJ, introduce yourself, and then you can ask a question. RJ, you're on mute. If you want to speak,
Hello, hello.
please
Sorry about
unmute
that.
yourself. Yep.
Yeah, so can you hear me now? All
Yep.
right. So I'm RJ Jacinto, one of the co-founders of United Gamers Now. So my question is, on our last episode of Waypoint, Sam Kim mentioned that if you ask him, uh, the trigger for the next bull run would be a NFT game that can onboard the Web2 gamers. And if you look back 10 years ago, the growth of esports in Web2 is continuous. But in Web3, there is a thing where we call what we call a bear market. So how do you think a bear market will affect the growth of esports? And because I also believe that the esports part of of blockchain gaming could also be a trigger for bringing the Web2 gamers on Web3. So that's my question.
I mean, with the bear markets and everything, like with all aspects of crypto, the retail trust and retail money like exits quickly. So I definitely think it slows it down. And I think it kind of gets back to the point where how do you insulate Web3 gaming away from broader markets? And I think one of the main reasons that it's so correlated is because of the token structures that currently fuel everything. And I think that causes normal people that are outside of our echo chamber and aren't as comfortable with the lingo and understanding the market cycles as we are, it causes people to run for the hills. So I think we need to figure out a way to kind of insulate ourselves better from the broader market, and let gaming just be gaming, and the market will do its thing, but the good games are going to last. And once people see that, I think that's when we're going to start to succeed, and it's not going to slow the esports space down for Web3 as much.
I want to double down on what John pretty much said there. In bull markets, the most fundamental coins survive because they have the most utility and have the most use case. And in terms of gaming, they have the similar counterparts. It's being fun and it's being playable. So if a game is fun and playable, it can survive a bear market.
Thank you, RJ, for the question, and John and Dex for tackling that. We only have 5 or so minutes, and at the end of each Twitter Spaces, I like to ask the speakers, what are you looking forward most in let's say 6 to 12 months. And so yeah, I'd like to go around and if everybody can just kind of briefly talk a little bit about what it is that you're looking for. In the meantime, in the audience, if anybody does have a question, you can still raise your hand. But yeah, I'd like to kind of go around and see what everybody's looking forward to. I guess we can start with Rich.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to a lot of what's to come in the next year to 3 years in terms of Web3 games and games that have pure asset ownership on the blockchain, right? Like it doesn't have to be a game with token that allows you to earn, but it could also just be where there's true asset ownership with NFTs. Um, that as well as I know entities like Stardust are working on custody wallets that are going to make it a lot easier for Web2 gamers to join into the Web3 space, and I think that's going to be a huge differentiator. So those two things are the core of my excitement in this space.
John?
I'm excited to continue to watch the trial and error of the industry, and that testing and constant iteration and being able to move quickly is going to help us produce really highly optimized games that will be able to provide structures that's inviting for everybody, for casual viewers, and also for esports leagues to get involved. And then I'm going to be really excited to watch content creators and esports orgs get involved with different DAOs and guilds and really bring this into the mainstream and tear away at the fabric of this is Web3 versus Web2 and make it to where this is just going to be a better experience for everybody and take that next step, because they have the lion's share of the users still, the traditional orgs and content creators. So we need to approach them and work with them and hear feedback, even if the feedback's not always the best. That's okay, because they have their ear to the industry that we want to be able to reach. So just collaboration is going to be critical for us, not only Web3 to Web3 collaboration, but us reaching out and putting our ear towards the Web2 space and hearing where key concerns are and things that we can do to make our products that we offer better and more inviting to someone that's not completely like us in our thought process.
Thank you. Mark?
Right now, some Web3 games or maybe all of it have esports goal on their roadmaps, right? If you check their white papers, we can see esports. Majority of the developers targets are esports. So let's see in the coming months the implementation of their work. Yeah, and also uh, we are all excited. Greens. We need to see greens, right?
Dex?
Yeah, guess I'm the last. So pretty much like we saw last year or like these recent months, like there has been there has been a trend of like developers launching their games, but one thing I could conclude like all these months is like they have underestimated heavily of what makes a game qualified for competitive to become competitive or being fun. Like there has been lots of estimation on like what makes a game qualified for the casual market, let alone the competitive market. And also there has been lots of challenges to dealing it to how do you prevent botting. Like there has been games who are trying to mix themselves with cryptocurrency, but they get infested with bots immediately after. So right now it's a huge challenge for game developers on how to solve all these issues, and to finally see that studio or maybe an indie dev to like come out on top and solve all these issues maybe in the next 2 3 years, or if we're lucky enough within the year maybe. That's what I'm most excited about. And we all know how human nature deals with these, and there will eventually be one studio or one indie dev that will solve all these, and I'm waiting for that moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. That kind of takes us to the top of the hour. Thank you, speakers, for taking the time to kind of share your thoughts on this topic. I think esports is going to continue to occupy more and more of our mind share as we go forward in the Web3 gaming space. Thank you, everybody in the audience who tuned in. Really appreciate you. And next week, tune in for kind of another installment. We'll be talking about in-game economics and tokenomics in general. So should be a fun one as well. Again, everybody, thank you, and